Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be installing a single gauge pod on a 1990 Mustang, that one right there. This will work for any 87 through 93 Fox body Mustang. This install is also applicable to probably a lot of other A pillar installs that you would be doing, dual and triple and even 4 gauge installs. It's pretty much the same process, except obviously with the other ones you have more gauges. But other than that, the install of the pod itself is basically the same. And I am going to try to do this as quickly as possible with as little filler and BS as possible, so I don't waste your time and mine. So one thing you will need is a 3/16 drill bit, a drill. Wire splicers are always good to have, although I don't know that I'll need them for this. I am connecting this thing to power using add a circuit. Got this from O'Reilly Auto Parts for about $6. I'm sure you could find it on Amazon for cheaper. And we'll also probably need to notch out the factory A pillar to so I can insert this wiring harness for the wideband that I'm going to put in there as well. So we'll need at least a 3/8 drill bit, I would imagine, or even probably bigger than that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But we will get started real soon, and I'll show you guys how this is done. I've done one in the past, but it was probably 5 to 6 years ago, but I doubt the process has changed. So we'll get started. Okay, so step 2 is mocking up the gauge itself. I prefer this gauge to be mounted pretty much as low as possible. Anything up here, if it doesn't have to be in my way, then why make it in my way? So I prefer to mount these low. You may have different opinions, and you can mount them anywhere on this A pillar that you would like. But I did find as I was installing the gauge into the pod itself, it does have provisions for connections like this in order to secure it to the pod or wherever you might be mounting it. It is very tight in the pod, just as it is. So I don't think I will be using those fasteners at all. So kind of might depend on your pod, but this one is very tight, so it's just gonna, I think, sit in there as a pressure fit. Another thing I liked about mounting it low is it looks like on these Mustangs there is a decent gap right there that I think I can fit my wiring harness through. That way I don't have to actually drill a hole into the A pillar in order to loom that through there. So the only thing I'm worried about is getting a drill back here in order to put one of the fasteners on. So we'll kind of see how that goes, and if it is too difficult, then I will move it up. But as of right now, I think I'm gonna put it right there, and we'll continue on once it's installed. Okay, so had a little different strategy with this. I ended up removing the A pillar plus that speaker grill. The bolt that goes in there is a 7mm, just FYI. Then you'll need a screwdriver to get the A pillar out. Then it just pulls out through here, but you have to take off this upper liner here as well, but that also is just a press fit. So you can see there's just some clips that fit into these holes right here. So just pull on it, it will come out. What I'm going to do now is, again, to avoid drilling holes in the A pillar. I don't know why I'm so phobic about that. I just don't want to do it. What I'm going to do instead is trim a little bit off of this corner, thereby allowing this harness to pass through this space right here. And what I'll probably end up doing is notching out a little bit on this gauge pod in order to allow that loom to come up, because this is going to fit pretty flush onto the A pillar. So just a little bit of a notch out will allow that harness to pass through. And I think my main reason for not wanting to drill into the A pillar right now is I may in the future have some type of boost gauge or something like that up here, and I just kind of prefer as few holes as possible for the moment. So that's the plan so far. I did run the harness down through the console here, and it was real easy. There's plenty of room, so you'll be able to fish that through no problem. What I'm going to do now is just mock this up again and then drill some holes and clearance a little bit, and I'll get back with you. Okay, so here is the final mock-up. It turns out I did not have to notch anything at all. Everything kind of fits pretty nicely back here. You can see a little bit of the wiring harness passing through there. This little guy though, if you mount your gauge this low, you are not going to be able to take this thing off without removing your A pillar gauge. So keep that in mind if you are planning like a stereo upgrade or just something like that. But it's not terribly hard to remove the A pillar. You'll just need those little pins. You'll probably need new ones when you pull the existing ones out, but other than that, it's really not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like this, mount it at this location, and get some holes drilled. Okay, so one more little helpful thing I did when drilling these holes, just to make sure you're drilling holes that line up, I just stuck a little punch through this hole, and I had another tool that fit nicely into the other one. That way, you're not drilling on this side and, accidentally screwing up your alignment. You could also tape it down, but I just prefer doing it this way. It just, make sure it's 100% correct. So this stuff is real easy to drill through, and I'm just going to do two more, one here, and then you can see there's plenty of room for that wire loom to go through. And after that, we'll almost be done. Okay, it's all mounted up. I haven't secured the A pillar yet, but just wanted to let you know that if you do mount your gauge low like this, in order to get the A pillar and the speaker grill cover in, you are going to have to loosen this guy up so you can have a little bit more room to get everything to fit in there. It's not complicated, just a few bolts. You'll have to drop what's under here, but again, it's really not a big deal, and you're only doing it the one time, hopefully. So anyway, that's the way it's gonna look. Okay, and this is why you watch YouTube videos before you do this stuff yourself. Don't make the same mistake I did and install your gauge with the wiring hooked up to the back of it before running it through your firewall. That is imperative, as the connector that goes to the O2 sensor is quite large, and you're not going to get away without drilling a hole in your firewall if you do that. So definitely put the small end through. I used a spot right down here. It was an existing spot, I guess, and it's kind of hacky, but that's what I ended up doing. So yeah, don't make the same mistake I did. I had to do the install 2 times because of that. So one other thing, I was trying to figure out how to hook up the dimmer switch from the Autometer gauge from the wideband to the dimmer switch, and was curious about which wire to use. As you can see, there's several here, but it is going to be this single wire. It's kind of, if you can see that, it's red and gray. And what I did was hooked up a voltmeter to this switch, and you can see here as, oh gosh, let me try to get this working here. Sorry, my ground cable fell out. Well, this was going to work, but it doesn't look like it's going to work now. Okay. Okay. So you can see as I move the dimmer switch, the volts change, and that is what the dimmer switch is doing, is changing the volts. So definitely do the red wire with the gray, and it is a single wire, and it's pretty easy to get to, but you will have to again loosen your gauge cluster here. Okay, I'm going to continue wiring this up and hopefully get probably 1 to just 2 more videos. Okay, so this will be the last installment. This is just showing you where I piped in for red wire power, and that was just on a 15 amp switched volt source. Make sure it is switched so when the key is in the off position there is no power. You can check that with a voltmeter and figure that out. And the wideband gauge also has a brown wire. You need to connect that to a power source that is always on. And I had some stuff ran earlier, so it wasn't an issue for me. I just tapped into one of those wires. Then obviously do a ground and all that stuff, and you'll be set. So this thing powers on, turns on, take my word for it. I have undone the fuse because I still